All right, so can you tell me at what point you realized that you were going to need surgery on your leg?
I think I always knew that I would need surgery. Maybe I didn't. Uh, I always knew it was different because I was born with the bowed tibia that was taken out at 4 years old. So I had a shorter right leg for as long as I could remember. I didn't know the extent of how to fix it, but I knew on some level that there was something different about it that would have to be addressed. I just didn't know when. So it was kind of a surprise when I was 11 and my parents told me about the surgeries, but not something that was out of left field.
When you were learning to ride a bike, how did that leg length discrepancy impact learning that kind of like motor skill development?
I
Like
don't
what
think it ever
were,
did.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever noticed a difference. I ran, I played baseball. I think at one point I even tried gymnastics. And so mountain biking or riding bikes to and from school to begin with didn't feel different. I think growing up at 4 years old with the leg length difference, it was just what it was. Like I didn't even think about it being super different. And I don't know that I noticed like a weird gait or pain when I was riding a bike. It helped that I had clip shoes so that I could use both legs at a full circle, but it just all felt normal to me.
What was it like growing up in Alaska?
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I loved being able to be outside. We lived about a mile from Kincaid Park, which was the mountain bike trail system that we would ride in the summertime. We tried skiing, and from how I remember it, my mom said I was too fast, so I wasn't allowed to. So I just stuck to mountain bikes. But it was just nice because it was such a close-knit community as far as cycling went, and such a small type feel, small town type feel, that it just felt like family all the time. You would ride the trail and people would come by cheering you on. My mom videoed bike races. We hung out with mountain bike friends. I babysat another mountain biker's kids when she was racing. And it was sunny all the time in the summertime. There was really good food. The seafood was incredible. So everything about it I just loved.
Do you attribute growing up in that environment to becoming a cyclist professionally?
Yes and no. I contribute my parents to me becoming a professional cyclist more than anything because we moved at some point during the school year, and that's why my dad and I started riding bikes to and from school. So it was my dad who really got me on a bike, and then we both just fell in love with it. So I think it didn't really matter what state it was in. We were going to ride bikes at some point. We were destined to, but it became a family thing. My mom liked it too. So we all rode bikes, we all raced. And I think being in Alaska and in that particular mountain bike environment definitely contributed to the love for riding bikes and the wanting to do it professionally when I got older because it was just something that brought me so much joy. And I think being in Alaska and the type of environment and community that Alaska was for us at that time definitely fostered it. But it was my parents who kept instilling it and kept nurturing my love for riding bikes.
When did you know you were going to have permanent damage in that leg? I mean, was it
I
immediately after the surgery? Like, did the surgery just go so awry that,
no, I didn't know the extent of it, and my parents didn't either at the time. It wasn't until a few months after I was supposed to be off crutches that it started becoming a little bit more weird. And then there were things like asking the doctor about my right foot always pointing down like a Barbie's foot, where my toes were basically skimming the floor, and being told to buy wedges for my left foot so that my foot didn't drag. Things like that that kind of got my mom really questioning and getting the ball rolling on no, this isn't right. Something happened. How do we confront it? How do we fix it? What's the extent? And I don't remember how long into it that was. I want to say it was less than 6 months after the surgery, but that I'm not 100% sure on. I just know that I had surgery. My parents surprised me with a road bike that I was going to get to ride after I got off crutches in 3 months. 3 months turned into 4 months, turned into 5 months. Things started getting asked. Confrontations were had. Other surgeries were had with a doctor in South Carolina and then a doctor in Maryland. So all of it kind of feels like a jumble, but I knew when we were working with the doctor in Maryland that I would have permanent damage, that my ankle and my foot would never be the same, and that my right leg was going to be shorter still because we had to actually surgically stump my left leg because that was one of the complications of the original surgery was that they stunted the growth in my right leg. And so we had the left leg stunted when we found out that that was going to be a thing, that my left leg would keep growing. So I think at that point, I knew that it was going to be permanent. The extent of which I didn't know until I got off crutches and it was difficult to walk, and a lot of physical therapy was in a pool and things like that.
Where was the initial surgery done?
In Alaska.
In Anchorage?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, as you were growing up and cycling was such a massive part of the environment that you were around, and then suddenly you couldn't cycle, you couldn't walk.
Yeah.
You were what, 12, 13 at the time?
14. 14. Yeah. 3 years on crutches.
3 years on crutches
Yeah.
is incredible. I mean, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 is an insane time anyway to grow up as a girl. Like it's the Wild West.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like add 3 years of crutches to that. What were you thinking your life would look like?
Oh,
Did
I had
you
no
think you were going to
idea.
be on crutches forever?
Yeah, no, I didn't think that. Like I knew I could see progress being made. I didn't know how difficult walking would be afterwards. But I don't remember thinking about things like that because I was going through puberty and we moved from Alaska to New York. So I had this culture shock, and then I had people bullying me in school and making fun of this big brace that I had on my leg and getting help carrying my backpack and being on crutches. So I think there was just a lot more emotional turmoil and more days of why did this have to happen to me than thinking about what it was going to be like after crutches. It was more just trying to get through the days and get to the point where I wasn't using crutches anymore.
Were your middle school and high school good with accommodating your crutches?
Yeah, I don't know that there was ever really a thought to it because I always just leaned the crutches wherever I was and just made it work on my own. So I don't know that I I didn't notice that it was bad, so I would say that it was good. Yeah,
I think that's
got me
the
thinking
way
on
you
that one.
phrased that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I never even thought about that. My parents always just really pushed me to always be a fighter and not think of myself as having a disability or being at a disadvantage in any way. So crutches were just an extension of my arms. I didn't think otherwise.
When was rowing introduced?
Pretty quickly after I got off crutches, because it was utilized as a form of physical therapy for what movement I had in my ankle. And at the time, like my mom, I don't know that she realized how much of a full body sport it was, but I had just built up big shoulders and I had strong arms from being on crutches for 3 years. And it was just something that I could use as physical therapy and also do in the comfort of my own home with an indoor rowing machine. And she wanted to try to find a way to keep me moving and to keep me active and not go down the rabbit hole of negative thoughts.
I mean, were you working with any kind of mental health provider as you were growing up and trying to figure out what living with a disability was going to look like?
No, no, I never thought that I would be living with a disability. It was always just like, okay, this happened. Yeah, it kind of sucks, but we've dwelled on it enough times. Like we had that time to dwell on it, but now we're going to move forward and we're going to figure it out. And the focus was the physical aspect of it and being able to walk and strengthen my leg and getting it to be as strong as it could be. And I think for me, I thrive on that kind of physicality. So the mental didn't feel like a struggle.
At what point did you start getting recruited to row in college?
Junior year of high school.
And
Yeah.
then where else other than UCF?
UCLA, Clemson. Gosh, it feels like so long ago. I think there were a total of 4 or 5 schools, but I can't remember the other ones because those three were the ones that I was,
More serious about.
yeah,
Why did you only row for 2 seasons?
because I could not adjust the foot plate in the boat to accommodate my discrepancy in my leg lengths. Because on the erg, I could change the individual sides of the foot plate because it's not attached. So I wasn't getting any kind of pain when I was rowing on the erg. But in the boat, the shoes are attached to one solid foot plate. And so to try to shimmy it so that it was different because I put my left foot more forward. It only worked until I pushed off. And then when I pushed off, they would just straighten out because they were both set the way the rails are set on the sides. It just kind of had to be straight or it wasn't going to stay crooked. And so I basically got every form of pain in my knee that I could because the force that your ankles take when you row, my right ankle couldn't take. So it basically jumped my right ankle and went straight to my knee. So I got every form of tendonitis, muscle strain. It got to a point where it was really difficult to walk and I'd be crying. And I'm an overachiever. So I would also try to row on the erg outside of practice when we were asked to do extra work or if we had a big erg test coming up and I just wanted to be better because I was also kind of like on the lower end of height for open weight rowers. So I felt like I had to do even more on top of having a right leg that wasn't as muscular as a left leg. So I basically rode myself into the ground of pain and worked with a physical therapist for my sophomore spring semester and ultimately came to the conclusion that if I didn't retire from rowing, I wouldn't be able to walk when I got older, or the possibility of not being able to walk would be higher. And so the quality of life question became more prominent, and that decided ending my rowing career a little earlier than I wanted.
When you were looking at what to do next, when did cycling come back into the picture?
It came back relatively quickly, but it wasn't because of myself. I spiraled hard after I had to retire from rowing because it finally felt like I couldn't be the athlete I always wanted to be. I never felt like I couldn't be an athlete until that moment. Like even when I was on crutches, it just felt like I was taking a temporary break, that something would work its way back around. And like being closer to getting off crutches, I didn't realize that I kind of knew that cycling wouldn't be a thing again. I just thought maybe there could be something else. And then my mom helped with that. So when rowing wasn't a possibility, it felt like A, I couldn't be an athlete anymore, and B, what was I going to be able to do for physical therapy now? I can't run. I wasn't riding. I can't row. Swimming is not great unless I want to go really slow because my right foot is basically an anchor because my ankle doesn't move. So there was always this like uncertainty of who I was and what I could do next and the things that can make me strong because being an athlete always made me feel strong. Even when I got the permanent damage, being the athlete made me feel like I didn't have that disability, that I could work with it and still be an athlete and be good at life and doing all the things I wanted to do. So I kind of spiraled, continued to spiral until my dad figured out a way to build up the shoe on my right side with a pedal system and shims in order to ride a bike and encouraged me to get back on a bike. And it was because of him that I finally rode for the first time in almost almost a decade. And that was when it was just like, oh yeah, this is what I know how to do and this is what I want to do. And I felt like myself again.
I mean, I talked to a fair amount of athletes who are in that athlete identity, trying to figure out who they are phase, whether they're graduating from college or they're
Yeah.
professional athletes and they're leaving their sport or they're aging out or whatever it may be. When you're looking at not only leaving sport, presumably, but leaving athletics as a whole, when you're
Mm-hmm.
told that if you continue doing this thing that you love doing, you may not be able to walk,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an impossible conversation that must have happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it took two people, my mom being one of them, months to drill it into my head because I just didn't want to say no. I didn't want to give it up. And it wasn't that I didn't know what to do next. Like, I didn't even think that process. The only thing I thought was, no, I want to be a rower. I want to be an athlete. I just don't want it to hurt.
At what point did you realize that the the bike that your dad had built was actually a thing that currently existed? I mean, paracycling has been an option
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, that's the interesting part because it's so unknown in the US that I had no idea parasport existed. I didn't know about paracycling, any of it, until I was 25 and a friend of mine jokingly said that I could be at the Olympics in a race. At least I thought he meant the Olympics. And I was shocked and went back to him like, no, I can't. I have a leg and a half on a good day. There's no way. And then he said, no, the Paralympics. And that was when doors opened because I went home, I deep dived on the research to see if I could even qualify, what it meant, all of the things that could happen, and found a race in Greenville, South Carolina in 2013 and decided to go to see if I could get classified. And that just forever changed my life.
I have rather unintentionally started a bit of a Paralympics series on this podcast recently,
Heck yes.
um, specific to wheelchair athletes and wheelchair sports. And
Yeah.
I have been learning Paralympic classification through these interviews, and you guys are truly incredible. Like I love talking to Paralympians and Paralympic coaches. Can you talk to me about the classification system of paracycling?
Yes. So we have 13 classifications. There are uprights, which is your typical road bike that you see anybody riding. Then we have hand cycles and adult trikes and tandems. And there are five classifications for the uprights and the hand cycles from C1 to C5 and H1. I guess I'm saying it backwards. C5 to C1 and H5 to H1. The fives being the most functional of the disability, going down to the one being the least functional. Trikes have two classifications based off the severity of their imbalances, and tandems only have the one because the person on the back of the bike called the stoker is usually the visually impaired athlete or is the visually impaired athlete, and then person on the front, the pilot, can be an able-bodied cyclist because they're helping that athlete ride a bike. They're basically the eyes for the visually impaired athlete. And so function for uprights, C5 typically would have an upper body impairment. C1s could be somebody with severe CP or something that impacts their balance on the bike. But it's like across the board because we have classifiers that see our medical records and see us and go through a gambit of tests based off whatever the disability that we have is. And then that's how we get classified. And we get seen by multiple classifiers so that there is a general consensus of where you're placed on the classification.
How long did it take the classifiers to put you as a C4? I mean, are you a rather typical C4 classification?
Yeah, so I actually classified as a C5 when I first started, which is typically upper body, but some lower body classifies you as a C5 unless it's severe enough that you would be a C4. So somebody with leg amputation, for example, would be a C4. So I started as a C5, but I also didn't have any medical documentation of my disabilities from 14 on. And then in 2018, I was starting to get really bad knee pain again to the point where I even contemplated having an amputation because it was just so miserable. And I ended up getting more testing done and going through other physical therapy tests that found nerve damage and other things going on with my right leg that actually prompted another review with the classifiers. And that's when I got reclassed to a C4 because essentially the nerve damage to my leg basically kind of puts me at the same level as somebody who has an amputation because I can't use the muscles from my knee down.
What was the conversation like when you were looking at potentially going through with that amputation?
Um, I don't know if it was a complete heart to heart or honest conversation with myself. I think it was more just, I'm so frustrated. I just want to get rid of it so I don't have to deal with pain. I'm tired of dealing with pain. It's been, gosh, 15 years, maybe longer. I'm not that quick. I mean, doing the math in my head, I'm 14 to 32, yeah, 18 years. Like, I didn't think I wanted to deal with pain anymore, and I didn't want to keep going through that thought process of, am I going to be able to walk? How much more is it going to be? So for me, it was kind of the extreme. But then I started asking people who I knew who did have a leg amputation what it was like, things like that, that made it so that I could really think the whole thing through. And then talking with other people who said, well, have you got tested for this? Have you done this? Have you done all of these things? So, like, I didn't take the steps to see if I could make it better. I just went straight to the other side. And I was able to kind of get myself back to a point where I could see it better with a more thoughtful approach of, yes, this sucks. Can we fix it? What can we do to make it better before, like, let's check off the boxes before we ultimately make that decision. So I don't know if it was ever a true conversation of like how my life would look if I did it versus how my life would look if I didn't. I just wanted the pain to stop.
What was your introduction to Team USA?
That selection race in 2013 because it was actually a selection race for World Cups that summer. And I had no idea. I just wanted to do a race. I wanted to see if I classified and then go from there. Like I didn't know how any of it would work. And I got invited to a talent ID camp and a Team USA trip after that race. So that was kind of my introduction. Like I got to meet people that were on the team, I got to meet staff and coaches that were on the team. And then I got to go to a talent ID camp and kind of show people a little bit more of what I could do on a bike. And then I got to go to Segovia, Spain that June.
I mean, were you committed to following this cycling journey, whatever it decided to manifest as? Or
Oh, absolutely.
were you kind of hesitant about
Oh
jumping?
no, I was absolutely. I have come to learn that when I love something, I go all in without hesitation. It's the times when I have hesitation where I'm like, maybe let's think this one through a little bit more. And so I was already racing able body for at least 2 years before I found out about para. And I dove into the deep end with that too, because I went from a category 5 on the road to a cat 1, which is basically the highest you could get before signing to a pro team. So I was all in with cycling. I loved cycling. It was like I came home. And so the opportunity to race para and travel and race my bike more just seemed like the next logical step.
How old were you at that camp?
26,
So, what year would that have been?
2013.
So, were you expecting to go to Rio? Like, when did the conversation about representing Team USA in the Olympics start?
I didn't know about Rio. I didn't know about any Paralympics. I only knew Olympics. Nothing para was ever televised, so I had no idea. I don't even know that I've knew about the Paralympics in 2013. I think 2014, towards the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, when you start earning spots for start rights for the games started happening, that I put two and two together about getting to go to the Paralympic Games and then trying to figure out what I needed to do in order to make the team. But I don't know that I thought about actually going to Rio until 2016 because the 2 years leading up to the games, we're racing for ranking to get a set number of female slots and male slots for cycling at the games. And then once that happens, then starts the process of actually making the team. So 2016, it became a real thing. But it wasn't, the thought process was there and the like, I want to go was there. But there was still like, I got to make the team first before I say that I'm going. Yeah. So I would say 2015, 2016 that I really started to think about it, or at least dream of me being in Rio. Yeah.
What kind of competition were you up against for one of those slots?
Oh, insane. I mean, every girl on the team that went to Rio was absolutely medal contenders and really strong. And we only had a set number of slots that there was potential that people that could medal at the games weren't going to go. And by the point of trials, there was only a few slots left to go for. So it was very intense, very nerve wracking, and exhilarating at the same time.
At what point did you know that you were going to Rio?
After the trials, after that time trial at trials, because I beat the people I needed to beat in order to get that spot on the team. So I knew that day, but I didn't know beforehand.
What were
Yeah.
the demographics of that team composition?
Across the
Like,
board.
were they around your age? Did they have
Yeah, yeah.
similar similar backstories and relationships with cycling?
I think I think maybe I was a median age. Yeah, I'm trying to think age-wise. The youngest might have been 1 or 2 years younger than me. The oldest was almost 10 years older than me, at least for the girls. Some people were born with disability, some people acquired their disability, some people knew about paracycling for a decade before, and some people just learned about it at the same time that I did. So it was across the board, yeah.
I think it's interesting when I talk to athletes who have spent their entire lives with their sport versus some that are like discover the sport from like the time that they discover the sport to the time that they represent their country is like maybe 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Like that turnaround is fascinating to me because
Yes.
you just like you were saying earlier, you literally just commit every waking moment to this
Mhm.
thing and hope it pays off
Yeah,
in whatever the
absolutely.
plot is.
Yeah. I mean, there are times when it doesn't pay off and those are the harder times, but yeah, I think especially for games, the motivation is interesting to me because the motivation for somebody who's quote unquote a veteran versus somebody who is a complete newbie is different. And that's fun to see those reasonings and see things through a different pair of eyes.
What were your motivations going into Rio de Janeiro?
Oh, I just thought it would be cool. I wanted to be the best athlete I could be at the highest level with the best of the best. So the motivation was just it's there. It's a chance to see what I could do against girls that I've been racing for years, but on such a grander scale, and to get to represent USA and put on red, white, and blue and actually feel the support from everybody back home because it's one time that they know about para was just something that was super exciting.
When that culminated in two podium finishes. That's incredible.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, very surreal. I still can't believe it. Because like I kind of expected one, the other one I didn't expect. And so that one, and that was the first one I got, and it was the first day. So it made it even grander than just being at the games. Insane.
I mean, so from the time that you discovered paracycling to winning two bronze medals in a Paralympic Games was 3 years?
Mhm.
Incredible. Like, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Were you hooked at that point?
Oh, I was always hooked. I think the second I got on a bike, I was hooked. So whatever that looked like, I wanted in. And even when I wasn't riding, after I got off crutches, during crutches, on some level, I always knew that if a bike was a chance, I would always take it.
So you win two bronze medals in your first Paralympic Games ever. How quickly did you turn your sights to Tokyo after that?
I have been notorious for not celebrating enough. So I think the second that Rio was done, the focus became the next race. And there was always the no, I'm going to go to Tokyo. I That's the goal. That's the big goal, but I want to do this race and this race and this race and ultimately get there. So I think Tokyo became a focus right away, but also probably too quickly because I also didn't celebrate like I celebrated Rio, but I didn't celebrate it as fully as I probably could have because I ultimately focused really quickly on the next and wanting to do even better at the next one, not just focusing on Tokyo, but like focusing on at least silver. Yeah.
I mean, normally it's I'm almost like an Olympic and Paralympic elitist when I ask these questions because I'm like, okay, well, from Rio to Tokyo, but there are 4 years of
Mm-hmm.
incredible competition between those two massive life stages.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of success were you having in that quad?
Um, I mean, I think I was having the same success the first 2 years of the quad that I was before Rio, maybe even a little bit more because I became a world champion in 2017 on the track. And that was the first time I got to be world champion also. But at the same time, the quad between Rio and Tokyo was different because I got reclassed to a C4 during that time and found a little bit more success. And then COVID happened. So, like, there was success, but there was also a lot more training, I think, for Tokyo than there was for Rio because it was a more knowledge based approach to trying to get to go to another games.
I mean, during that quad, you were nominated for an ESPY.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
What went into that nomination?
Oh, I have no idea. It was a total surprise to me that I got nominated. Um, and I think sometimes like you almost wonder why me? Because I think there are so many para athletes that are amazing at what they do that we could all be nominated. So I honestly have no idea why or what. I
Do you remember who ended up winning the award in 2019?
want to say it was a swimmer. I don't remember. In 2021, you mean?
In in 2021?
Yeah, I was nominated in 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
I saw 2019 somewhere. Apparently that is fake news.
Yeah, it would be new. If I wasn't 19 too, I would that would be shocked.
Well, anyway,
Yeah.
um, when you were, what was the difference going into Rio versus going into Tokyo?
Um,
Like training wise.
I feel like there was the same amount of training as far as focus went because I just wanted to be the best. I wanted to get to Rio and be the best I could be. I wanted to get to Tokyo and be the best. I wanted to get to Tokyo and win, honestly. I think the biggest difference was in 2016, I had just started working with my coach. In 2020 and 2021, I was working with the same coach. So we had the rapport. We knew things that worked well for me, things that didn't. We were changing things up. So there was still fire under the belt and new motivation because it was a possibility of seeing what could be achieved with the work put in. Whereas 2016, it was just like, I get to go and almost too much excitement. Whereas 2020 and 21, like I knew what to expect. So I could handle that a little bit better.
3 days after being named to Team USA, what happened?
Long story short, I was on a training ride and somebody panicked with something in the road, overcorrected, caused a crash that had 6 or 7 people go down. I happened to be one of them, kind of landed on top of everybody, kind of landed halfway in the road, and ended up fracturing my skull in 2 spots and suffering a TBI and not remembering any of it or the 5 days that followed.
Where was that training ride?
About 5 miles from my house, maybe a little bit more, but it starts like a mile from my house.
And how long were you in the hospital with that TBI?
I was in ICU for 5 days and then transferred and in a regular hospital room for 2 days before being discharged to come home.
Did you know that that was going to be have a massive impact at the time? Or were you just ready to like move on?
I don't think either of them. I think that looking back on it, my brain was so hijacked at that point from all of the injuries and from my body trying to heal itself that I was coherent with some things and thought things through with things, but at the same time had no idea what anything looked like. Like I was fully adamant that I was going to go to Tokyo. I was fine. I'd do the time trial, don't have to do anything with anybody else, but I'm racing my bike. So I don't know that I really knew the extent of anything. Because also at the same time, I was telling my mom and my husband that I didn't know if I ever wanted to ride a bike again at all, let alone race. So I was all over the place. And yeah, I don't know that I knew the extent of it.
So what did that time between when you sustained that injury on the training ride and then Tokyo look like?
Oh, I fought like heck to make that still happen. I fought my loved ones. I fought myself. I worked really hard in physical therapy. I was riding my bike days after I got home. I even rode outside, which in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have ridden outside that close to an injury. But I I pushed. I wanted to go. I was motivated. I knew that I was a favorite going into Tokyo. I wanted that chance to win the time trial, and I didn't want anything to stop me, and I didn't want something that somebody else caused to be what kept me home. Like I didn't want that taken from me. So I did everything I possibly could to try to stay on the team roster for the games and to get on a plane to get to go to Tokyo.
What was the span of time between that injury and the Paralympics starting?
6 weeks, I think. Yeah, right around 6 weeks. I'm stubborn. I know I'm stubborn. I'm very strong-willed. I was born strong-willed. Stubborn will always be a thing to a fault, even. So I didn't even think about it as 6 weeks. I thought about it as like, nope, I'm good to go. I can go right now, even though I couldn't walk past the driveway without having to sit down and take a breath. But I could ride a bike, so I'm fine.
Did you end up going to Tokyo?
No.
At what point did that, at what point was that decision made for you?
The last possible second, honestly. It was made pretty much the day that changes could not be made because you have to submit you have to submit your roster to the IPC so many days before the game starts. So it was definitely a push to try to stay on that roster through the submission date, but ultimately that day was when I knew I wasn't going.
What did it feel like to watch your teammates compete
I
and
didn't.
like know how close you were?
I didn't. I couldn't. It was too raw. I couldn't watch the Olympics. I couldn't watch the Paralympics. I couldn't watch the Winter Olympics or Paralympics. I told myself that if I walked out to where my bikes were with the thought of going to ride and I started to cry or get emotional, I was not going to ride because I didn't want to associate negativity with my bike. But I couldn't watch. I got updates about how they were doing, and it was bittersweet because you want them to do well. You want your friends to do well. But at the same time, that was one of the things I was excited about was getting to go and be there with my friends. And I couldn't. And I wasn't. And I didn't get to be a part of that and experience that and be proud and excited for them there. So yeah, it was not easy.
How quickly were you able to get back into racing after that rehab process?
I actually didn't race for the first time until April of the next year. I didn't do any able body racing before that. So the first race back was the first paracycling selection race in April. And I think it was selection race for both World Cups or the first two World Cups that were happening. But there was definitely a lot of physical therapy, a lot of time getting back to a point where I could ride a bike on a consistent basis, mentally and physically. But then also a lot of questioning of like, do I want to keep racing or do I want to just ride for fun or do I just not want to do it? And ultimately went to that race in April with the thought of I'm going to race my bike. And if I love it, I'm going to keep going. And if I don't, I'm going to walk away.
April of 22, right?
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. I probably said 23, but
No, you're good.
yeah, April of 22. So injury was towards the end of June of 21. So 10 months, roughly.
I mean, what did your relationship look like with cycling? I mean, you'd been through so many
Yeah.
physical, I guess, physical hurdles. What
Mhm.
were the mental hurdles like?
Um, it's a good question. I don't, sounds weird to say, but I don't know that there were any mental hurdles. I think for me, if anything, it was scary to get on a bike again, but it wasn't because I could ride with my husband or ride by myself. So I knew that I was going to be okay. And then moments were scary. Like the first group ride was scary. The first group ride where it started to rain was scary because rain happened on the day that I got hurt. Associations of things had to be fixed. And so the mental part of all of it wasn't necessarily on the bike things because for me, I feel like the bike has always been my safe place and always home. And yes, I got hurt on my bike, but I don't remember any of it. And I think if I remembered what happened, it would be a completely different story. But at the same time, I've grown and I've become such a better person and somebody I'm really proud of because of that injury that as much as I would never ever want to do it again or go through it again or have anybody else go through it or have everybody around me experience that again, that helped me be a better person. So I think for me, mentally, the bike is still something positive and something good for me. It's still a way to prove that I'm not only strong or here, but I'm thriving and I can let myself show my strength through riding.
What did it mean to be back in contention for Paris?
Ah, everything. Probably more than it needed to be. Um, because once I couldn't go to Tokyo, the focus became Paris. Almost to a point where like Paris meant more things than just riding a bike. So yeah, to be in contention just made it feel like I was doing everything right.
I mean, and then when you got to time trials and you ended up first, what kind of feelings were going through your head? I mean, you have a litany of adversity that you've overcome.
Yes. Um, I want to say the first thing I thought is relief because I didn't realize how much stress and pressure I'd put on myself. Like I knew that I did, but I didn't know the extent of until after it happened. And I could have that emotional and physical release and response. I was ecstatic. I was relieved. I was thrilled, over the moon, excited, wanting to see everybody who had been part of it, wishing that more people could be there physically, wishing my dog, who we said goodbye to before I even went to Paris, could be there because celebrate with him because like even he was such a big part of my recovery that I just wanted everybody to feel it. And I just wanted to explode with joy and shout from the rooftops that we did it and take a breath and just kind of try to let it sink in that we made it, that we did it, that we weren't stopped. It just took a little longer.
I think that the pronoun usage is so interesting because you're saying we did this,
Yeah.
we went through this, we conquered this. Who is we in this situation?
Oh, everybody that sat in the darkness with me. I know that I'm the one pedaling the bike and I put in the work and I put in the physical work and the mental work and all of the things that go into being an athlete at this level. But I'm not doing it alone. There's no way that I could do this by myself. I was literally picked off the ground by people when I got hurt. I have my husband help me when my ankle's not working to this day. He gives me piggyback rides if I need to, or puts his arm out so that I can lean on him to get my ankle moving so that I can start walking. My mom and my brother were here for almost a month after I got hurt helping. My dog sat by my side the whole time and barked at people and tried to bite people, even though he was only 6 pounds. He tried to bite people if they got too close. Really good friends took me to Disneyland to when I could to just remember to be excited and to feel like a little kid again with that excitement. They helped fundraise. There's so many things. I had friends even come over and try to give me smoothies. Family members come and bring their kids and get me out of the house. Friends surprise me and take me to the beach just for a few hours of forgetting all of the struggling and all of the darker days. So for me, those people are the we. They're the ones that got me back on a bike physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the things. And I couldn't have got to where I was and achieved that gold medal without them.
Yeah, I mean, so often we talk about athletes as individual success stories, but no one has won a gold medal by themselves, even in an
Absolutely.
individual sport.
Yep.
So to get to that point and then to not just think about yourself and how excited you were, but to want to celebrate with everyone, your family, your friends, your
Yeah.
dogs, the
Yeah.
mailman
Yeah.
in that moment.
Yeah.
That's a true testament to the support that you've had truly since the beginning.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I'm fully aware of the success I've had and it not being just because of me. Yeah.
LA.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because then I can actually celebrate with everybody because they're all coming, whether they know it or not now. I'm going to make them come. So, yes, LA. We are all going to LA. Yeah.
Um, is there anything else that you think that I missed about telling the story of your relationship with paracycling? Anything that you'd like to add context to? Any stories you'd like to tell that I haven't uncovered so far?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Um, with that being said, I think those are all of my questions.
Okay.
Let's see when your episode is coming out. I think it'll be a little bit. I
Okay.
actually have episodes already scheduled until the beginning of the new year. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Good.
Yeah, so your episode is actually the one that's coming out on New Year's Day.
Amazing.
So I'll
It's a good
talk to you in
start to the year.
2025.
Yes, I love it.
Um, what do you have planned between now and the new year?
Time to enjoy riding bikes without any structure and letting the last 3 years truly seep into my bones and getting to properly celebrate because I've also learned that all victories, big and small, should have proper celebrations, whatever that looks like for somebody, instead of automatically going to the next thing. There's definitely more living in the moment. So I think that that's my biggest priority for the off season. Once I've settled down, because I still feel like I'm landing when I come home because I've been gone for so long.
What does it feel like to have a passion that is quantifiable in its success story?
Interesting question because
Because
I
like
think my
if
answer,
you were a painter or if
yeah,
you were
yeah,
doing like an art, I don't know if your ascension would be as like
yeah.
rungs of a ladder.
I think that's an interesting question because I think if you asked me that before I got hurt, the successes are the outcome goals, the medals and the world championship titles. and more of things like that, or the accolades that come from helping with that success. I think since getting hurt, sometimes the success is as little as just getting on the bike. And I think that could totally spark a whole different conversation about the mental fortitude and identifying yourself in your sport and having that be too much of your self-worth versus an outlet or something that you love doing that isn't defining you. So I think for me, I mean, I see the quantifiableness of the sport. And yes, winning and getting the medals are the end all be all for some. And sometimes, like Paris, winning in Paris was an end all be all moment for me. So that is success. Getting anything lower than gold in the time trial would have not been successful in my eyes. But at the same time, the success is also, was I better than the last race? Was my performance, which is also quantifiable based off power numbers and speed and all of the other data you can get from riding. But I think I try very hard to not have it be just defined by the numbers and defined by the feeling. Like I feel fulfilled. I don't feel satisfied because let's be real, I just want more and more and more because I'm a competitive athlete. We don't even play board games in my house. But I've learned and am still learning because I definitely have days where if I don't do well a workout or I don't get the results I want, I feel less than. But I'm learning that success is showing up.
How do you keep that passion for your sport?
I think that's an ever evolving passion. I think I think it starts with just loving riding my bike and the simplicity of it, remembering why I loved it when I was a kid, finding new routes, traveling, remembering the people you met. I think there's so many ways you can keep motivation in sport that isn't just about the physical process of doing the sport. And I think that helps with the motivation because I think sometimes I don't even know that I need the motivation to get on a bike because I just love it so much that I just want to go for a bike ride. Like I spent the last 4 days off my bike because big races are done. The last big race happened. I could take some time off. And today I rode my bike because I wanted to ride my bike because I missed riding my bike. It wasn't that I had to, it wasn't that I had something coming up. It was just, I want to feel the wind on my face. And I think that alone helps with the motivation because it doesn't feel like motivation.
You are like my favorite kind of athlete because I end up talking to nearly every athlete that I have on this podcast about athlete identity and motivation styles. That just seems to be an
Yeah.
undercurrent of
Yeah.
the stories that I've been able to tell on this podcast. And when the motivation is inherent to the love of the sport,
Yeah.
those are my favorite athletes to talk to because I ask these questions and they just go, well, why wouldn't I love it? Like, well, why
Yeah.
wouldn't I, when I'm not competitively training, be doing this anyway?
Right. Yeah. I hope, thank you. I appreciate that because I also have the hardest time answering the question, what motivates you? Because I don't know the answer to that. I don't think about it like that. Like, yeah, I've had days where I've had to motivate myself, but they're so far and few between. And it's the days where, like, I'm just getting over being sick and it's cold and raining out and I don't want to go outside and I have no way of going inside. Those kind of days. But, like, I can ride my bike inside just as well as I can ride outside. So, getting to ride my bike is just fun.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we have not already covered?
No.
All right, amazing. With that being said, I think we are done here for today. If
Awesome.
anything amazing happens between now and the first of the year, keep me updated. If you could
Okay.
send me a photo that you'd like to be used for social media
Okay.
once the episode is published, you can just email that to me.
Okay.
Um, I'm really excited to put your story together. Thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for the flexibility with the mix up on
Oh
my
my God.
part. I felt so
Yeah,
bad when I woke up and I was like, oh my God. Oh no.
I
Shoot.
I have actually interviewed athletes from all over the world, so like that was I
Okay.
work with some crazy time
Okay.
zone differences.
Yeah, because honestly, like I got up at 3:30 this morning because I'm still battling the jet lag because I just got home last Sunday, but I was like, why didn't I wake up at 2 this time? I could have just talked.
Yeah, so I'm in Central Time, so it was like
Yeah,
4 a.m. here. Um
I'm so sorry.
no, it's all good. It just so happened that I had free time right now, and I'm like, Sam, I'm free.
Yes, that
Give
was
me
great.
12
Thank you.
hours.
Yes, thank you.
But yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. Congratulations on everything. I look forward to watching you in LA and putting your episode
Thank
together.
you.
Keep crushing it.
Thank you. You too. I look forward to the podcast coming out and hearing all the other ones because now I'm excited about everything else coming out.
Yeah, your episode, so it's coming out on January 1st, but your episode
Yeah,
will numbers wise be episode 106
love
of
it.
this podcast. I've had the most incredible group of people. Today I just posted episode 94, and to be almost at 100 stories told
Yes,
is the most incredible thing. So thank you
amazing.
for being one of these amazing stories. I'm so blessed to
Absolutely.
be able to talk to people like you and call it a job.
Absolutely. Thank you.